When Joseph Smith received the plates and Urim and Thummim, he also received a breastplate. The breastplate is not described except that the two stones and silver bows could be fastened to it, and this constituted the Urim and Thummim. The stones and breastplate formed a set and were intended to work together. The breastplate was just as sacred as the gold plates and the two stones, being included in the commandment to Joseph to protect them with his life. The curious thing about the breastplate is that it seemingly appears out of nowhere. We know where the plates and two stones came from, as their history is recorded in the Book of Mormon. However, the Book of Mormon does not mention the breastplate at all, nor does Joseph's history. The breastplate simply shows up in Moroni's possession with the Urim and Thummim. This is odd, since the compilers of the Book of Mormon went to great lengths to document the chain of custody for the plates and the sacred things, which included the Urim and Thummim. The obvious questions arise. Where did the breastplate come from? Who made it? How did Moroni come to have it? A deeper question must also be asked. Given the breastplate's connection to the two stones, which are more than likely the Urim and Thummim of Aaron, is it possible that the breastplate was his as well? The modern church summarily dismisses the possibility that the breastplate given to Joseph Smith by the angel Moroni could be the same as that worn by Aaron. The primary basis for the dismissal is the belief that Aaron's breastplate was made of fabric, while Joseph's breastplate was made of metal. It is true that Aaron's breastplate was made of fabric, fine twined linen to be specific. But is it true that Joseph's breastplate was made of metal? Neither Moroni or Joseph Smith describes the breastplate in detail in Scripture, nor do they comment on its composition. They certainly do not state that it is made of metal. The question then becomes, where did the church get the idea that Joseph's breastplate was metal? The statement of the church in the Old Testament student manual makes the claim of a metallic composition, but does not provide a source. In fact, the church does not provide a source for its claim in any of its manuals or authoritative publications. However, there is one primary source that saw the breastplate and purportedly recorded it was made of metal. Lucy Mack Smith, the prophet's mother, in her history relates that Joseph allowed her to handle the breastplate. Lucy dictated her remembrance to Martha Jane Cope and her husband Howard in the fall and winter of 1844 to 1845. There are two extant original manuscripts of the history. The original draft does not contain the story of the breastplate. There is another manuscript called a fair version, which is retained by the church. The fair version was composed by the Copes in early 1845 using the rough draft and other notes and sources. The fair version is a handwritten document which was edited for publication. There are line-out deletions as well as additions to the original draft. This is an important point, since a key line in the story of the breastplate has been amended. In the original draft of the fair version, Lucy says she could see the glistening metal of the breastplate. The statement has been lined out in the final version and replaced with the word "feel." In the normal state of affairs, the amended version is considered the authentic version for the purpose of publication. However, both versions have been published, often without informing the reader of the existence of an alternate version of the text. B.H. Roberts, in his comprehensive history of the Church, used the amended version. Elder Roberts was under no scholarly obligation to note the unedited version of the text, since the final edited version is considered authoritative. Other scholars have used the draft without a clarification that the wording was changed for publication. For example, Anthony Sweat, a member of the BYU religion faculty, did so in the 2015 annual Sidney B. Sperry Symposium, as reported by the Church News. It is understandable that scholars would seek to use the original text in pursuit of historical verity, but scholarly ethics require the appropriate use of sources and methods. Even if the original text was accurate, meaning that Lucy did see glistening metal, this does not mean that the breastplate itself was metal, nor does it rule out that Joseph's breastplate was Aaron's breastplate. The breastplate of judgment, Aaron's breastplate, was made of linen, but it also included gold rings and gold chains. There is nothing in Lucy's history that precludes the possibility that the glistening metal was a reference to the gold rings and chains of Aaron's breastplate. Lucy Mack Smith's account of her handling the breastplate provides some interesting and important details. We must bear in mind that Lucy did not actually see the breastplate. It was covered by a thin muslin handkerchief. Mother Smith, as she was called, noted that the breastplate had 4 straps to secure it to the body. She said that they were made of the same material as the breastplate itself. She did not identify the material. For those who claim a metal breastplate, this is a problem. If the breastplate is made of metal, then the straps must also be made of metal, for that is what Lucy Mack Smith stated. On the other hand, if the breastplate was made of linen, as was Aaron's, then this would account for the pliability of the straps. The straps do, however, present an issue for a claim that Joseph's breastplate was Aaron's. The descriptions of the breastplate in the Bible do not mention linen straps. Instead, the breastplate was attached to the ephod by gold chains and rings. Moreover, Aaron's breastplate was attached to the ephod and not the body. Lucy Smith's account states that the straps were designed to attach to the body, running over the shoulders and fastening at the hips. Lucy Smith felt the proportions of the breastplate and stated that it was concave on one side and convex on the other. Presumably, it was designed to fit the contours of the human body from the neck to the center of the stomach. The implication is that whatever the breastplate was made of, it could be molded and was stiff enough to retain its shape. Metal can certainly be shaped. Metal breastplates for war were shaped to fit the human body, but so can linen. Linen can be soft and smooth, but it also can be stiff and rough. In fact, in antiquity, linen was used to make combat breastplates. The Greek version of the linen breastplate was called the linothorax. Alexander the Great adopted the linothorax for his army, and the emperor himself wore one. William Smith, younger brother of Joseph Smith, also had an opportunity to see the Urim and Thummim and breastplate. His description, recorded in the March 9, 1832 Saints Herald, provides important details on both items. His description of the relationship between the two is important to our current discussion. The important detail in William's description is the fact that there was a pocket in the breastplate for the storage of the Urim and Thummim when not in use. It was placed over the heart. This detail is wholly consistent with Aaron's breastplate of judgment, which also had a pocket over the heart. If Joseph's breastplate were Aaron's breastplate, then this feature would be expected. Of course, if there were a second breastplate, it could have been constructed according to the description in the Old Testament. Based upon the eyewitness descriptions, Joseph Smith's breastplate fits the description of Aaron's breastplate in every detail but one, the straps. There is a plausible explanation for this apparent contradiction. The straps may have replaced the gold chains in order to attach the breastplate to the body without the ephod. Neither Joseph's history or eyewitness accounts mention the presence of the ephod. While the descriptions of Joseph Smith's Urim and Thummim and breastplate do conform to the description of Aaron's breastplate of judgment, they do not preclude the possibility that additional Urim and Thummim and breastplates were produced. The Church has not made a case to date for when these theoretical artifacts were made, or by whom or for whom, so these questions remain. It is clear from the size of the breastplate and Urim and Thummim that they were not made for Joseph Smith. They were too large for the prophet. Besides, according to our chain of custody, the Urim and Thummim given to Joseph Smith by Moroni, which included the breastplate, was first acquired by Mosiah. Mosiah obtained them directly from God. God had gained possession of the Urim and Thummim of Aaron around the time Lehi and family left Jerusalem. These facts raise important questions. If God had Aaron's original Urim and Thummim and breastplate in his care at the time of Mosiah, and if Mosiah needed a Urim and Thummim for translation, then why wouldn't God simply give the king Aaron's set of interpreters? Why make another set when Aaron's was available? Of course, one might make the argument that Aaron's Urim and Thummim and breastplate were taken away by Nebuchadnezzar and destroyed. This would necessitate the making of a second set for Mosiah. But this ignores the fact that the Lord took great care to preserve the regalia and would not let them be destroyed. He made this clear with the episode of the plague of boils on the Philistines, who had defiled the Ark of the Covenant. The Lord would never have permitted the Babylonians to take and destroy the Urim and Thummim and breastplate. He took possession of the interpreters and had them available for Messiah when the need arose. The logic of the chain of custody and the physical descriptions of the breastplate and Urim and Thummim make a strong case for the claim that Joseph Smith's set was that of Aaron's. In other words, Aaron's breastplate and Urim and Thummim had been preserved from the Babylonian invasion, had been given to Messiah, had been handed down through the generations of Nephite caretakers, and eventually was given to Joseph by Moroni. But there is more to support the claim than logic and circumstantial evidence. An eyewitness in a position to know the facts made the assertion that the Urim and Thummim and breastplate held by the storage room and used by Joseph Smith were indeed Aaron's. That eyewitness was Hiram Smith, Joseph Smith's brother and most intimate confidant. Hiram's testimony was recorded by William Horne Dame in his diary entry of 14 January 1855. Both the account of Lucy Mack Smith and that of William Smith point out that the breastplate of Joseph Smith, which we now know to be that of Aaron, was quite large. Lucy said that it fit a man of extraordinary size. William Smith, Joseph's brother, claimed that the breastplate and Urim and Thummim were too large for Joseph and must have been used by larger men. This is remarkable, since Joseph Smith was a large man himself, as the St. Louis Gazette reported in May 1844. Joseph was reputed to be over 6 feet in height, weighing around 200 pounds. If the breastplate was made for men larger than Joseph, and indeed made for men of extraordinary size, then these men must have been much larger than the norm of modern man. We know from the biblical record that there were men of extraordinary size in ancient times, such as Goliath. There were even races of giants. Og, king of Bashan, was one such giant. His bedstead, or sarcophagus, indicated his size and was remarkably large. Translating the number of cubits into feet, the bedstead measured 13 to 14 feet long and 6 feet wide. But neither Aaron or his successor Israelites, for whom the breastplate was made, were giants. When Israel faced the Anakim, a true race of giants, they were much smaller and seemed like grasshoppers in comparison. Still, Aaron must have been much larger than Joseph Smith, judging from the size of the breastplate. But how can this be? Aaron lived during a time when the polar configuration was present. This congregation of planets continued until the crucifixion of Christ, when the heaven was scrolled away and the planets left Earth to take up their present positions. The presence of the planets above Earth's North Pole and their close proximity had profound effects on Earth and its physical environment. One of these effects was a substantial reduction of Earth's gravitational pull. Gravity is an electrostatic phenomenon, and the polar configuration would have changed the Earth's electrical charge and its perceived gravity. We know from decades of manned spaceflight that humans who live for extended periods of time in the microgravity of space grow noticeably taller. If the ancient Israelites grew up and lived in an environment where the perceived gravity was dramatically lower than what it is today, then it would be only natural that they would be taller and larger than modern humans. When the polar configuration is re-established during the millennium, the ancient physiological norms will return. Man again will be larger and taller. Along with the purely Nephite treasures, such as the gold plates, the treasury of Cumorah held the Urim and Thummim and breastplate of Aaron. These were sacred treasures of Israel, and more specifically of the royal line of David. The large room in the hill was more than a Nephite treasury. This being the case, the question arises as to whether there are other Davidic treasures kept in the Cumorah treasury. Are any of the sacred things considered to be Nephite actually Davidic?